Good morning. Today is Tuesday, September 29, and today we're going to review what we learned yesterday about criteria and constraints. So let's go ahead and go down to this week in science. All right. So I got an email from a few of you that said something to the effect of the notes feel like they're going fast, or I get kicked out of my internet or out of my Zoom meeting, and then I feel like I'm behind. So I wanted to show you some things that I have added to help you with that as we go along. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and go back to yesterday's assignments and activities, and I'm going to click on Engineering Digital Notebook. And I wanted to show you something that I've updated. So here's a little description of what the digital notebook is. It kind of gives you some hints that if you decide that you want to use a spiral, that's okay too. Reminding you to click on the big blue words in order to make your journal bigger. And then below, I have for each slide, I have linked the class recording of what we did in class. And in that, you'll have a copy of what was done and said in class, along with all of the examples that we went over in class. And then I also have a picture of the notes so that you can be able to fill it in on your own time. So if you are someone that's feeling overwhelmed, try your best to fill in the notes as we go along. But if you start to fall behind, go ahead and take a deep breath and then just listen and follow along and participate when I ask you to add information and ideas into the chat. And then you can go back after and finish filling in your notes if it really gets to be overwhelming. Okay. All right. Then we're going to go ahead and go back to home and to our This Week in Science button. And we're going to go down to today's date, which is it's Tuesday. And we're going to start by going over yesterday's identifying criteria and constraints practice assignment. So to do that, I will have this linked. It's not linked right yet. You will be going to the formative that we did yesterday. And I'm going to go ahead and pretend like I clicked on that assignment. And I'm going to go ahead and go to it. All right. So this is what it should have looked like. It talks about, if we start out with the vocabulary, the scenario is just the story that tells us what we need to build and why. The problem is what has happened in the scenario that you need to design a solution for. In other words, what is happening that causes you to need to build something? And then the criterias are the requirements, the things that it has to do or have. And the constraints are the limitations, the things that basically limit what your design can and cannot be, or cannot be. Okay. All right. Scenario one. Let's go ahead and listen to it.
The Incredibles are on their way to defeat the nefarious Screenslaver, who is trying to control the world with her mind-controlling abilities. Unfortunately, she has utilized her abilities to leave the whole Incredible super team powerless. They need to find a way into her lair. There is a single window that is 20 feet up in the air. After realizing that they no longer have their incredible abilities, they take a closer look at Edna's super supply kit that she has sent with them. In the kit, there is a bow and arrow, a spool of wire, suction cups, and some tape. They are able to disarm the alarm system for only 10 minutes, at which point it will be reactivated and they will most certainly be caught.
Okay. So first I asked you to decide what the problem is that the Incredibles are trying to solve. So there's kind of a couple parts to this. The first one that a lot of you came up with, and it's absolutely true, is that they've lost their superpowers because of the bad guy. So we could put that in there, that Screenslaver took away their powers. But that's only part of the problem. We don't really know what the thing is that she needs to build or what is the problem that needs to be solved immediately. So we're going to look back, and it looks like in order to do that, they need to be able to get into a window that's in her layer, right? Or into her building. So what I'm going to say is that Screenslaver took away their powers, and they need to get into her layer. Now, you could have also said into her window so that they could get to her, right? So both of those should work. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to look at the following. Which of these are criteria in our scenario? And there's a hint here that there were 2 correct answers. Many of you got one of them correct, but the other one they didn't get quite as correct, and that's okay, or they got incorrect. And so what I would do is I would go back into the assignment, look at the answers, and see what makes sense, and go ahead and redo it and resubmit it. That's fine. All right, so here we go. They need to be able to climb 20 feet into into the air. So if a criteria is a requirement, it's something that it has to do or has to be. I think that is it, right? Because it needs to be able to do that. They need to be able to climb 20 feet in the air. All right, they must climb into the window without using their superpowers. Okay, I'm seeing the word must. That's something that has to happen, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on that one too. These are our 2 criteria, okay? All right, the next 2 say they only have materials in the super kits and they only have 10 minutes. Well, the word only right there tells you that there's a limit being put on their device, right? They can't do more than that. They can't use anything other than what's in that kit, and they can't use any more than 10 minutes because otherwise the alarm will be disarmed, right? So that right there tells us that those 2 items are our limitations, which are our constraints. So we can go ahead and click on those 2 things. Here's a big hint. Anytime you see the word only, there's a good chance that it is going to be a constraint. Another one is if you see things like it cannot do this or it cannot do that. That's another example of things where you probably are going to see a limitation and you're looking more at a constraint. Okay. All right, let's go on to scenario number 2 and listen to it.
Rei is being chased by stormtroopers through the forests of Takudana when she runs into a deep 20-foot wide chasm. The stormtroopers are about 15 minutes behind her, and she needs to quickly construct a method of getting across. It must support her weight and be able to be taken down so that the stormtroopers can't follow. She quickly assesses her surroundings and finds there is a large tree next to the chasm, some long vines, fallen branches, and a blaster and a large hook-shaped piece of metal.
Okay. So again, what is our problem that Rei is trying to solve? Well, first of all, she's trying to get away from stormtroopers, right? So she is trying to get away from the stormtroopers. Okay. But there's a second part to that problem too, the thing that actually is making her have to build something. And in order to get away from the stormtroopers, she needs to find a way to get over the chasm. And a chasm is another word for a really big hole, okay? All right. So you'll notice that there are 2 parts to it, getting away from the stormtrooper and getting over the chasm. Now, if you said just getting over the chasm, I went ahead and gave it to you because that technically is the problem that she has to deal with right there at that very moment. But the whole problem is technically this whole thing, okay? All right, looking at our requirements and criteria again. All right. So she only has 15 minutes until the stormtroopers will catch with her. Okay, so I'm seeing the word only. That makes me think that's probably going to be a constraint. Okay, again, there's two correct answers for both of these. Next one says, her design needs to be at least 20 feet wide. Okay, at least. Anytime we see the words at least, that means it can be bigger, right? Definitely. In fact, if it's longer, it probably is going to work even better because it'll be able to hold on to the sides of that hole better, right? So when we see at least, that means that that is a requirement. It has to be at least that because it can be more than. If you can say, if you can ask the question, can it be more than? And you can say yes, then it's not a constraint. It's not a limitation. Okay. The next one says her design needs to be able to support her weight. Okay, we're seeing the word needs again. Oh, if it needs to be, then it's a requirement. It has to do that. If it doesn't, she's going to fall down into that hole and it's going to hurt. And it's going to be probably as worse or worse than if she got caught by the stormtroopers, right? All right, final one. She can only use the materials that are around her. So the words only again, and the fact they are materials are going to tell us that this one must be a constraint. All right. So if you didn't get those correct, that's okay. You can go back and revisit it and redo it and do better. If you didn't get the assignment done, go ahead and go back and do it and walk through it with this video if you want, and go back and redo this or do the assignment so that you understand what the examples are. All right, now for the fun. I'm going to go back to our Canvas page and I'm going to be linking a Kahoot that you can do anytime between now and Friday. We're also going to play it in class. So if you're there for class, you'll be able to do it there. That will be fun. And it'll be more practice on constraints and criteria and constraints. The assignment for today is to check your grades and complete any missing or incomplete work. And if you want to redo any of the assignments that you didn't like the score on, you're welcome to go back and do that and look at the feedback that I've given you. Tomorrow's lesson is going to have you doing another one of those formative practices like the one that we just did. It's going to look exactly the same. It's just going to have a new scenario. Okay? Good luck. Feel free to email me and I hope to see you in class. Bye.